Hello everyone and welcome to this next session. This is going to be a brilliant session, and I don't know if you're allowed favourites, but today has definitely been my favourite day so far. I've absolutely loved it. I've had a great time networking with people, and there's been some brilliant sessions. I've cried several times today, and I have a feeling I might cry again, hopefully not on camera. So but before I get carried away introducing Jules, I'm just going to do the housekeeping, although I'm sure you've all got it memorized by now. But please do use the emojis to show your love for this session, and use the chat to show us that you're there and you're listening. And also, please do post your questions in the Q&A tab, because we'd love to hear from you. But I am super excited to introduce our speaker this afternoon, because I actually know Jules personally. So I've known Jules for about 3 or 4 years, and in the last year our kind of professional worlds have collided, and it's just been absolutely wonderful to be in part of the same networks as her. And so I'm super excited to be introducing Jules today. And I don't know if anyone remembers A Star Is Born, the film. When Lady Gaga and Bradley Cooper were doing their kind of film tour, Lady Gaga kept saying, Bradley Cooper made me feel like I was the only person in the room. And I have to say, Jules, you're the Bradley Cooper to my Lady Gaga.
So, Bradley Cooper.
So I'm sure that all of you will feel seen, you'll feel loved, you'll feel valued, you'll feel empowered as a result of this session. And talking about A Star Is Born is an appropriate segue, because this session is about mental health. And in comms, we talk a lot about mental health, but I'm not sure how much we actually live it. So I think this session is going to be amazing. Jules is an expert in emotional intelligence. She's got loads of experience in comms. So this is going to be absolutely brilliant. So I'm going to hand over to Jules. So take it away.
Thank you. Where do you want me to take it? But Chish. Right. Hello, comms heroes. It's an absolute privilege to be here with you all. As Carly said, it's been a blinding day, actually a blinding week. And it's just really great to be with you all and to network with such fantastic people. It feels like a family. I know it sounds cheesy to say that, but that is how it feels. So you will have no idea who I am, but I'm Jules Loveland, and I'm comms manager for a charity called Dementia Adventure. I'm married with 2 kids. I live in Bedford, but I am an OG Essex girl, so you're probably going to hear that coming out in my accent every now and again. I've worked in various forms of comms. Oh, sorry, next slide, please. Various types of comms, from video production through to website development, when that was a fairly new technology, which tells you how old I am, for about 20 plus years. And I took a career break about 15 years ago, where I trained and practiced for a while as a counsellor. And from that, I moved into mediation in the community and in schools. So that was helping people with things like conflict resolution and sort of emotional intelligence, that kind of thing. So I'm not a mental health professional, but I have trained in that kind of stuff. I'm just not accredited anymore. And also, I think, just for true disclosure, I should tell you that I live with complex PTSD and anxiety and depression, and have gone through various seasons with those things over the years. And so some of what you're getting today is my own experience. Some of what you're getting is hard and fast research from other people, clever neuroscientists and those kinds. And some of it is just from my own study. So I just want to say, I'm not a mental health professional. I am a comms professional, but hopefully there is something for you to take away today. So next session then, sorry, next slide. This session, we're going to just take a minute to look at, why do we even need to talk about comms? Mental health in the comms industry. Why is it a problem? What is the state of the situation in the industry? We're going to look at what specifically is impacting our mental health in our work. And then we're going to move on a little bit to look at signs to look out for in ourselves, how we can help ourselves, and then things that our managers or our workplaces could do to help us. And then hopefully, if I don't go over too much, we'll have time for some Q&A as well. Okay, next slide, thank you. So why do we want to talk about mental health? Is it just because it's trendy? There is no doubt, I work a lot in digital, mental health is trending, the conversation is everywhere, but I don't think that's a sign that we have arrived at where we need to be. I actually think there is still a massive conversation and load of development that needs to happen in this area. We, even pre-pandemic, if you can remember back then, had an issue in this industry, and we're going to look at some data in a minute. But what's really clear is that there isn't enough support available, and there aren't enough appropriate places for people to go when they need help. So that's why we need to keep talking about it. I think for comms professionals, we're often seen as kind of these sociable, bubbly kind of people, and that can mask sometimes what's really going on the inside. And we're going to look at some data in a minute, because we know that comms professionals love data, that shows that actually the profession itself is actually contributing to poor mental health. Jane Fordham at the ICCO Global Summit last year asked this question: when did it become acceptable for what should be an uplifting, creative and cerebral career to become life-threatening? That's a really big question. And I think that kind of grounds and weights a little bit the seriousness of what's happening in our industry. Now, I just want to caveat this talk. When we talk about mental health, it's a very broad subject. There are some people who are born with mental health issues or have them for other reasons. And then there is mental health that comes as a result of going through something circumstantially, or perhaps stuff that's happening at work. Today, I'm not talking about things like schizophrenia and borderline personality disorders and those kind of things. I am talking more about things like anxiety, depression and stress-related stuff, just in case anyone kind of contacts me afterwards and goes, your stuff was completely irrelevant for me. As I say, I'm not a therapist. But let's look at some of this data. So pre-pandemic, or as I like to say, BC, before COVID, the PRCA did a survey of comms professionals and looking at the mental health, the state of the mental health in the industry. And they found that 60% of comms professionals are being diagnosed with a mental health condition, that 59% versus 30% of the UK average say that a major cause of their stress is workload, that 31% describe their job as very stressful, that 43% say that workload is the reason they can't take time off, and then only 23% have actually taken sick leave as a result of their mental health. That 23% is a very, very low number when you look at 60% of comms professionals say they've been diagnosed with a condition. So PRCA dug into that, next slide, thanks, and they asked the question, why are you not taking time off? I'm hoping you can see this, it's taken from their study, so it's a bit small and grey, but the blue bars are UK worker average, and then the pink bars are PR professionals, because of course we get creative colour. And they're asking the question here, why didn't you take time off work? And you can see the pink bars are all longer than the blue UK average. And they are things like, I had too much work to do to take time off. I just wanted to keep it to myself. I didn't feel that my situation was bad enough. Those numbers are high in our industry, which shows there's a lot of stigma and there's still a lot of misunderstanding around mental health issues. Okay, next slide. Then COVID came along. So this is the situation before COVID. CIPR did a study earlier this year, released a report called PR in a Pandemic. And they found that in the last 12 months, comms professionals are 5 times more likely to say their mental health has deteriorated in the last 12 months. Someone else this week said that that figure basically equates to 90% of the industry. That's massive. I mean, Houston, we are a problem. 8 in 10 report feeling the mental health impact of COVID. Nearly 50% are saying that they are working an extra 1 to 2 hours a day, and 15% are working 5 or more hours a day. But less than 25% have accessed mental health support. That troubles me. That really troubles me, that last figure. So in a minute, I want to take some time to look at ways that we can recognise perhaps if we're not doing very well ourselves, because I think picking up early signs is really important in terms of our overall health and recovery. I'm going to take us through some things we can do to help ourselves. This isn't all encompassing because I don't have a week to take you through all the amazing neuroscience and all the different stuff that's out there. So this is really just a snapshot, and it's going to be a bit of a kind of a roller coaster of a ride through. So keep up. My notes will be available after the session as well if you need them. But what I really want to say before I move on is that mental health comes with a lot of shame. And I think, you know, if someone gets diagnosed with cancer or breaks a bone, there's a natural empathy that comes. But when people talk about mental health issues, there's a fear, and that can make you feel like there's something wrong with you. And I just want to say that as someone who has mental health issues and has had mental health issues, and talking to people who are probably experiencing them right now, you are not weak, okay? You're epic. You're a comms hero. The fact that you're showing up every day as a wife, a mum, a friend, a colleague, a manager, whatever it is, whatever capacity in life that you're showing up, you are smashing it if you are also battling a mental health issue. And I want you to understand that fear and stress and overwhelm are not signs of weaknesses, but as Kate Middleton from the Mind and Soul Foundation says, they are signs of being human in a difficult time. And, you know, just in case you're not clear, this has been a bit of a difficult time. No one expects a worldwide pandemic. So you're epic. And we're going to look at how the industry is trying to intrude on your epicness and rob you of your mental health. Okay, I want you to understand that it's not your fault, is basically what I'm trying to say. There's a list here of things that impact our mental health in the comms industry. This is not a complete list. I'm sure all of you can probably add to this a handful more each. But I think if we just quickly go through some of these, hopefully you'll relate to at least a few of them. So first and foremost, it's an always on, always available culture. That just seems to be the nature of the industry, that we are readily available to our colleagues and to press teams and all those other things all the time. The 24/7 news cycle and 24 social media has made that a more intense experience. If you work in digital, then you're going to be exposed to things like trolling. Trolling impacts our mental health. It is a very serious form of bullying. And even if it's coming through your corporate account, it still causes you to feel some stuff. The RNLI did some amazing work on social media recently about the lifeboats campaign with refugees coming over. They got so attacked by people on the far right who aren't happy with people coming over here for help. The way they handled their social media was incredible, but I just kept thinking about the people on the other side of those accounts and what they were having to deal with every day. I think as communicators, we're natural listeners. We have to tell stories. So listening to stories all the time, particularly if we're working in not-for-profit or charitable sector, sometimes we're hearing stories that are difficult to hear. And I think empathy and listening to difficult things can be very draining on our mental health. I say that in the right way. And I think also similarly, being listeners and, you know, listeners across the board, not just of difficult stories, and processing that is exhausting. So look at all these things that you do. I'm not even halfway through my list. I'm just thinking, wow, look at all these things that you do. Being multidisciplined, okay? Back in the day, you had a PR team and you had an internal comms team and you had a video production team and you had your media team and you had your digital team, and these were all different departments that nicely work together. Often all of those roles are now wrapped up in one or two people. So that's full on, that's going to affect your mental health, and that will lead to multitasking, all the balls in the air all the time. Crisis management. Not all of us work in crisis management, and those that do are usually very excellent, very well prepared people. If you want to know more about that, Andy Barr did an amazing talk on it yesterday. But I think that even if you're well prepared in crisis management, there comes a point where it's squeaky bum time and you have got adrenaline and cortisol running through your system, and that affects your entire nervous system and your brain. So that's going to impact your mental health. We've got smaller teams, short deadlines, massive workloads, especially perhaps since the pandemic, where even though I think people are seeing the value of comms slightly more now, when they're now giving us more and more work to do. We've got to be reactive and proactive at the same time. So yes, you want me to have this really well thought through campaign, but you also want me to respond to all these things that are happening in the news at the same time. That's like, whoa. And then thinking strategically and creatively at the same time. That's physically two separate parts of your brain working at the same time. This is intense pressure on your entire nervous system. This next one, being misunderstood for asking questions like why. I don't know about you, but I believe that comms is a strategic role. And so I think people get us on board because they want us for the output that they think they're going to get from us. But what they don't necessarily realise is what they're really paying us for is to sit at the table and go, why do your audiences want that? Why is that a good idea? Why is that a strategic priority? And I think asking those questions, sometimes that makes us the bad guy. And I know I have walked out of meetings feeling like I just feel like nobody likes me. And that doesn't feel good. Similarly, I think coming into that last one, feeling undervalued, it feeds into it. People don't really understand the nature of comms sometimes. They don't understand why we do things the way we do things. They don't understand why everything can't go on social media, or a session earlier with Stephen today, why everything can't be a press release. So there's lots of those kind of pushing back conversations which are just draining and can lead to conflict sometimes, and that's very difficult for our mental health. And then there's things like constantly needing to upskill and learn. This week, I feel like my brain has expanded about 1,000 times, learning about things I didn't even know that I needed to know about, that I definitely do need to know about. So thank you to all the amazing people that have done incredible talks this week. And now I've got a lot of reading and research to do. And then things like comparison, we all do it. This isn't just for comms professionals, but we do. We look at our colleagues, we look at the opportunities people are getting, we look at other organisations, perhaps we're scrolling through jobs because we haven't quite got job satisfaction. All those kind of things are having a drain on our mental health. Okay, so that's a lot, and I hope that some of you can relate to some of that. Maybe give me a clap if you can relate to some of those. That feels awful asking for my own clap. I should have said a thumbs up, maybe. Don't applause me because I asked for it. Next slide. If you can relate to some of that, let's see if you can relate to some of these, just to kind of brush ourselves off, because that's all a bit heavy, isn't it? I'm aiming for a 20%, higher than 20% click rate. Okay, if we were in person, I'd be asking someone to do the Inigo Montoya one in his accent. I don't dare try and do a bad Spanish accent, but right, moving on then. Moving on. Right. Before we look at some possible signs that we might be experiencing that are those kind of early warning signs that we're not doing okay, I just want to talk a little bit about the importance of self-awareness. If we don't have good self-awareness, we can't recognise the signs. And self-awareness, fortunately, is something that we can read about and grow in and develop in. So it's not something that we can just say, oh, I don't have it. We can develop it. Self-awareness really is a key to managing our mental health and moving towards healing. It gives us the ability to identify what's going on inside of us and recognise those signs of when we're not doing well, and then give us the option of being able to seek help. Along with self-awareness, we also need to develop emotional intelligence, which again, I could do sessions and sessions on that, but I'm going to touch on it a little bit. But with the kind of the happy partnership between self-awareness and emotional intelligence means that you will come to know what you're feeling, why you're feeling about it. And then that gives you some insight into why you're behaving the way you are, maybe why you're doing some of the things that you do. Because we all do things where we think, I don't really know why I did that. I don't know why I'm responding in the way that I'm responding. So we're going to come on to some tools in a little bit, ways to help yourself. But I'm going to give you this one for free right up front, because whilst I go through the signs, I want you to be asking yourself some of these questions, okay? I journal, so this is how I kind of check in with myself. You might want to do check-ins when you're out for a run, drinking a cup of tea, sitting out in nature, whatever's good for you. But learn to practice asking yourself these sorts of questions quite regularly. How am I doing? What do I need in this moment? What does my body need? It's not often a bottle of wine that you think it is. Do I feel safe physically or emotionally? How do I feel about myself? And what's taking up my headspace? Those are just really good questions to regularly ask yourself. Okay, next slide. So again, these are just some signs. They're not all the signs. And I tried not to go for some of the really, really obvious ones that you might already know about. I know we all know quite a lot about mental health already, and a lot of us are quite well informed. So I didn't want to kind of teach granny to suck eggs, but hopefully some of this is a good reminder for some of you. So things to look out for are things like poor sleep. Are you struggling to get to sleep? Or are you struggling to stay asleep? Those can be signs of an overstimulated nervous system. As I say, there is neuroscience behind all of these, but I haven't got the time to go into it, even though the geeky, nerdy side of me really, really wants to bore you to death with it. So things like negative thinking, overthinking, are you finding yourself in cycles and patterns of thinking that you can't get out of? Do you find yourself over-planning or overworking? It's one thing to have a big workload that means that you have to stick in an extra couple of hours. It's another thing to be overworking, over planning, rewriting your to-do list 1,000 times, that kind of thing, almost like you can't switch off, like there's an addictive drive. Do you fall into people pleasing? So the trauma response, you might have heard of flight or fight. Well, there's fight, flight, there's freeze, which is when you feel stuck, and then there's something called fawn. And one of the ways that fawn manifests itself is through people pleasing. You end up saying yes a lot more, almost being a bit over flattery, a bit sycophantic, taking on more, just trying to please everybody. It's like an insecurity thing. What about poor concentration? Are you struggling actually to stay connected with the task that you're working on? Are you drifting off in meetings? Have you got a loss of motivation? So that's things like, not loss of motivation as in, my job's a bit rubbish, but things like things that you enjoy. Things that you normally used to get enjoyment from, do you not feel like doing them anymore? What about perfectionism? Are you the sort of person that used to let, okay, there's the odd typo here, there, whatever, we let some of these things slide. Have you now got to the point where you're like, every single thing has got to be perfect, or you literally just cannot rest? Are you engaging in numbing behaviours? So there's a bottle of wine there. In my case, it would be Netflix box sets. But, it could be overeating, it could be sleeping a lot. Are you doing anything that is where you're trying to avoid feeling the feelings that you're feeling? I hope that sentence makes sense. Are you procrastinating? Are you putting off the stuff that you should be doing? Are you constantly overwhelmed, even when circumstantially there's nothing really particularly overwhelmed going on? You just feel overloaded all the time. Do you experience numbness? So different to numbing, but numbness is when you just feel empty, don't feel anything at all. Or do you feel yourself withdrawing? Are you not engaging with your colleagues? Are you not engaging with your friends and your family? Next slide, please. Sound like Chris Whitty. Do you find that you're getting regularly ill? So when your nervous system is impacted by adrenaline and cortisol and your stress hormones, that impacts your nervous system, and then that impacts your immune system, and that can mean that you're prone sometimes to just catching every bug that's going. Do you find that you can't relax? In the evening, you just kind of, I should just be enjoying this film, but I'm not. I'm terrible at this. So I used to be able to just sit down and enjoy a film. But unless I'm in the cinema, I can't do it anymore. I sit and my husband will put a film on, and then I'm on my phone scrolling at the same time, or I'm playing games on my iPad at the same time, or I'm drawing. I have to be doing something else. Like I can't just be still and relax. Do you get palpitations regularly? Do you find that you have to kind of cough or, adjust yourself slightly to get your heart rhythm equal? Do you find that you've got a tight chest, like you can't fill your lungs, like you just feel like compressed? Do you have chronic pain? This is something that's often overlooked. We can put it down to, I've got a bit of a bad back because my chair's uncomfortable. But often pain is a signal from our brain going, you're ignoring me. I'm trying to tell you that you're not doing very well. So I'm sending you another signal so you pay more attention. Do you feel restless? Like you get into bed and feel like you can't get comfy, or you want to move your legs around? Do you feel guilt and shame? Now, they're two different things. Guilt is what I've done is bad, or the thing that I've done is not good enough. Shame is I am bad, or I am not good enough. And those are often both signs of something going on in our mental health. Usually those are signs of depression. Do you feel anxious all the time? Do you have like a generalized anxiety that's not attributed, you're not about to do a talk to all these amazing comms heroes. That's normal anxiety. But is there an anxiety that's kind of bubbling in you all the time? Are you having panic attacks, and are the frequency of them increasing? Do you feel sad just a lot of time? Just sad, just blue, and a bit hopeless? Do you find that you have emotional outbursts that come out of nowhere? I went back into therapy last year because I realised that my anger was getting out of control. I've got 2 children and a husband. They don't need to be part of that. You know, it'd be a tiny weeny thing and it would build up and build up and build up, and then I would explode. All my emotional reasoning just went out the window. That was because I was overworking, overloaded, and finding the pandemic too much. I couldn't homeschool and do my job well. So, you know, that's a natural response that any of us probably would have had. But that's how I noticed that I wasn't doing well. That was my first sign. Oh, my emotional outbursts are not great. So I head off to the therapist. And do you find you have no appetite? Or maybe the opposite, like in my case, I eat my feelings, but you might feel sick all the time and not feel like you want to eat. So, okay, just a few signs. And I'm hoping that maybe for some of you, you recognise that in yourself and are thinking, okay, maybe I need to do something about this. I can't ignore it anymore. And I just want to say that when it comes to healing mental health issues, the very, very first step after acknowledging that maybe something's not right is having self-compassion. Okay. If you feel embarrassed about having mental health issues, if you feel ashamed, or if you've got recriminations or even fear about it, and you're battling against yourself and how you feel about yourself, that's going to get in the way of your healing. Actually, you need to stop kicking yourself in the butt and instead give yourself permission for where you're at and recognize that it's not your fault that you're at where you're at. And actually, you're going to help yourself now and love yourself and lead yourself towards healing. And I know that makes me sound a bit hippy-dippy, but so be it. It's true. Okay. To overcome mental health issues, you're going to need to continually show up for yourself, advocate for yourself, and fight for yourself. And you won't do that if you don't love yourself. Okay, so what does it look like? Honestly, it's a lifelong journey. I'm not expecting you to have nailed self-compassion by the end of this talk. And actually, as British people, where we've been taught to be very self-effacing, self-compassion and self-love is a little bit alien to us as a concept. In other cultures, it's more prevalent. So I think for us, we need to look at things like being very kind to ourselves, recognizing that this is not our fault. We need to recognise that we've come a long way. If you go back to that list I had at the beginning of how the industry is contributing to our mental health, and you are doing those things on a daily basis, no wonder Asif calls you a comms hero. I call you a comms hero. Speak to yourself as you would a friend. So in other words, kindly and encouragingly. Okay, treat yourself as you would treat a friend. In other words, with respect and with value. And remind yourself that it won't always be this bad. You won't always feel like this. You will heal, and there are solutions. And if you can, even on the bad days, try and see this as an opportunity to learn and grow. I can be really honest and say there have been times in my mental health journey that have been ugly and painful, and I wouldn't want to go back to them. But I can also say that having emerged out the other side of them, I am a better human being. I have more empathy, and I am contributing better to society. So let's look at some things we can do to help ourselves. Now, some of these might seem a bit obvious, but I want to take us through it anyway. Now, the first thing is talk about it. This is actually the hardest thing to do. When I say talk about it, I don't mean have all your psychology worked out. I've got this problem. This is what it's for. This is what it's all about, etc., etc. I'm talking about I'm experiencing one of those signs that Jules has just gone through on her slides, or perhaps something else that you know you're experiencing, and I'm not sure that's normal for me, and I need to tell someone about that. I didn't do that. I didn't know that not being able to get on the tube without feeling like you're going to die, or not being able to walk down the street without everything going wibbly wonky and me feeling like I was going to panic, or not getting home and needing to down a bottle of wine before I could sit down and do anything. I didn't know that those were unhealthy, not normal behaviours. And I think that had I said to somebody, do you know what, this is what I'm experiencing, they might have been able to say to me, yeah, that isn't normal, and maybe I can help you in some sort of way. Maybe they might have been the ones to flag it. So find the strength deep within you to tell just one person, this is something that's going on in my life that I've kept a secret, and I need some help with. And it doesn't have to be a friend or family. It could be a GP, or in work, it could be one of your colleagues or HR. I didn't, as I said, I didn't do that. And I was just very fortunate that a colleague of mine had been keeping a close eye on me. She had noticed that my stress levels were significantly high. And on one particular day, I mean, I'm laughing about it now, but it wasn't funny at the time. I was going around the office telling everyone that my throat was closing because I'd eaten a Nutri-Grain bar, and I thought the Nutri-Grain bar was poisoning me. And my colleague thought, yeah, I'm not sure that's normal for Jules. She's normally quite a rational thinker. So it's okay, you're allowed to laugh at that. So she rang my dad. She got his number, and she rang my dad, and my parents collected me and shipped me off to a GP. I was in my 20s, and I got referred for therapy and got put on medication. And that was kind of the start of my journey, really. All right, the next slide then. On a similar theme, but not the same, there's one thing to talk about what we're experiencing. The next thing is directly asking for help. This feels really, really hard too. I really get that. And there's something about stress, anxiety, depression that lies to us and makes us feel very isolated, and makes us feel like no one would get it, no one would understand. So I want to say to you right now, you're not weak. You're not the only one. You will be understood, and there is always a solution. Okay, so please find somebody, even if it's one of the people who are on the talk to slide, to talk to and ask for help if you know that you need it. There is help available to you, even though all the mental health services are really stretched. There are lots of resources. My very, very last slide will show some of those resources for you. Okay, next slide. So when it comes to helping ourselves, as I said earlier, do that checking in with you thing, you know, how am I doing, etc., etc. And I'm running out of time, so I'm going to do this really quickly. But try and develop an emotional language. So read up about emotional intelligence if you can, and try to develop a vocabulary for feelings that's more than just happy, sad, angry, because we are so much more complex than that. We are bewildered, we're thrilled, we're optimistic, we're jealous. There are all these kind of emotions. I actually played a game with someone I was coaching once where I got her to do A to Z of emotions just to help her to develop her language so that she could talk about it more easily. And then try and normalize what you're feeling. So I'm feeling jealous. This makes sense because my colleague just got promoted over me and I'm way better than she is. Okay, those kind of things. Okay, next one. In the workplace, this is really important. Sorry, next slide, thank you. Establish boundaries, okay? It's the B word. You've heard it loads of times. You probably know what I'm going to say, but do you do it? That is my challenge. Challenge deadlines and requests. Someone today already talked about the ASAP. Everything that lands on my desk is ASAP. I'm starting to push back. Is it a strategic priority? If not, then it probably isn't ASAP. It's probably a preference that I do it quickly for you. So challenge deadlines and requests. Take regular breaks. I am a shocker at this now. I'm working from home. There's no one interrupting me, talking to me about Vigil, talking to me about what Carol from finance did in her lunch break. I've got no idea about what any of this stuff's going on. So I just work through and work through and work through. It's not healthy. Take breaks. Finish on time. 15% working an extra 5 hours a day. That's nuts. Okay, there is nothing in the world that needs you working consistently till 10, 11 o'clock at night. So finish on time. Turn your phone off when you can. I know that's a biggie. Consider doing things like removing apps when you're on holiday, and remove email from your work phone as well when you're not working. I think that's a really big one. It's too easy to press that button. There's your emails, and then you're back into all the stuff and thinking about all the stuff. Okay, next slide. The biggest boundary of all, the power of no. You are comms heroes. I want to know that you are using the power of no. You are a powerful human being, and this tiny little word gives you a lot of power back in the workplace. All right. You're allowed to say no, or at the very least, not yet, because everything that you say yes to means you're saying no to something else. All right, everything you say yes to, you're saying no to something else. And usually when we're saying yes to a lot of stuff, we're saying no to our own well-being. We got to stop that. Okay, so make your yeses count. Only have a few, have a handful of yeses and make them really count, and everything else has got to be a no. Okay, next slide. Okay, and finally, on helping ourselves develop good habits. This is the stuff that I hate, but it's absolutely true. There's loads of science around it. We know that being in nature and doing good exercise and eating healthy food and all those kind of things, drinking water, are really, really good for us. But when we are struggling with our mental health, they are the last things that we want to do. So I have learned in my own life, this is a top tip from me, to just schedule the stuff into my calendar in the same way that I schedule in meetings and picking up the kids from school and all the other things that I do in life. And I do it simply because it's in my calendar and my calendar tells me to. Not that I'm driven by my calendar, but if I wait to do those things until I feel like it, I'll never do them. Because when I am not in a good space, I never feel like doing any of those things. I want to eat Doritos under a blanket and watch reality TV. So I think that's the reality, is we have to put this stuff in, and don't wait till you're in a crisis before you start trying to do this stuff. This stuff, there's loads of research and science around it, around how they are preventative measures. So I work for a dementia charity. There's an awful lot of research now showing how connection to nature and meaningful outdoor activity actually prevents the onset of dementia, some dementias, and slows down the progression of the condition. So, and that applies to mental health across the board. So let's get these good habits in. Carly, I'm literally on my last 4 slides, okay?
This is brilliant. You could go on for ages.
I'm going really fast, sorry. Right. So that's how we can help ourselves. How can managers or workplace help? The first thing is to look at our cultures, okay? Culture is the soil of our organisation, and what is in our soil determines whether something grows or not. It determines our productivity and our fruitfulness and the well-being of our teams. So if we have rubbish stuff in our soil, like gossip and overworking and no strategic priorities and all those kind of things, people will grow in a wonky way and they'll break. What we need are core values that facilitate things like transparency, authenticity, empathy, and empowerment. Okay, those are the things, some of the things that we need in our culture, and we're going to go on to look at that. But let's build our cultures as managers and as leaders around employee need, because if you look after your employees, guess what? They're looking after your beneficiaries and your organisation. Moving on. So managers, what could you do? Well, you could start by having one-to-one meetings with no work agenda. Okay, just take a lunch break with one of your team members and ask them how they're doing, and show real interest and listen well. Give them good eye contact. Be present with your body language. Don't be looking around like it's an academic tick box exercise. Actually mean what you're asking, and then reflect back what you've heard. Say, oh, so I think I hear you saying this. That helps people feel, that simple thing helps people feel really listened to. Offer genuine support, even if inside you're thinking, I don't know what to do with this. Make it your priority to go away and find out. If all you do is offer someone a leaflet for where else they can go for support, you've shown that you care. You've gone the extra mile. Be generally encouraging and supportive all the time. Don't wait till someone hits the skids before you start being nice to people. Make it part of your overall value that that's how you relate to people, and develop emotional intelligence and self-awareness to yourself. Honestly, if someone said, what is your top tip for line management? That's it. Develop emotional intelligence and self-awareness, because if you can do that and understand the way you are with other people and how you come across, that will change everything. And there's this really good book that's probably going to be back to front to you maybe, that's called Connect, and it's by David Bradford and Carol Robin. I don't know if someone wants to try and stick that in the chat. That's a really good book about how to build relationships and grow in self-awareness and emotional intelligence, and it's a really easy read. Right, next slide. Value employee voice. I'm going to rattle through. Make employee voice a priority. Do surveys, do pulse checks, create a culture where managers can receive feedback as well as give it. Really important. Next slide. Lead by example. Okay, take the breaks. Let people see you taking breaks. Leave work on time. Don't send and reply to emails out of hours, and don't ask employees to do things that you wouldn't do yourself, like working at the weekends. Next. Rattling through, otherwise we're going to have no time. And offer meaningful benefits, okay? Perks like eye test are all very well and good, but what about flexible working? What about home working? What about offering everybody the same day off so everyone knows when they're off? No one's going to get a phone call or an email that day. Things like that really matter. Next. Okay, and finally, celebrate and reward. Don't just reward people when they've done stuff, but reward people for who they are. Okay, encourage them, empower them, create opportunities, don't micromanage, and be full of gratitude all the time and voice it. Last slide. Okay, and if you want any support, take a snapshot of this here and you'll find it. There's places to go for therapists, there's apps you can try, and there's various places where you can get free resources. And of course, I think someone already flagged there's the herd mentality campaign as well. So please Google it and be part of that. I'm so sorry, I have massively overrun, Carly.
Oh no, it was absolutely brilliant, Jules. I think all of us would love you to keep going on, because I know you said you're not a therapist, but that definitely felt like therapy.
Oh, so, I love you guys.
That was brilliant, and I think just incredibly helpful. I think if people here haven't heard that stuff before, I think that's going to be really valuable for them. So we have about 4 minutes. Don't
worry. They'll never have me back.
So I just one quick question is, you mentioned how someone noticed that you weren't doing well and they called you out and they called your parents to come and pick you up. If if we notice that someone's not doing well but they don't recognize it themselves, what would you suggest that we do in that situation?
I mean, people have agency, they have choice, so we can't force anything on people. All we can do is kind of be loving, which is something we don't talk about in work environments very much. So check in, have a break with that person, have a cup of tea with that person, ring that person for no work purpose, be a friend, basically. Just and if you feel then through building relationship and connection that you can maybe suggest a few things, share your own stories, your own experiences, create trust through authenticity. I think that's a really big thing. I think you can't just jump in with someone that you never talked to and go, by the way, I don't like your emotional outbursts, I think you've got a mental health issue. There has to be relationship. There has to be.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's really good. You probably won't have seen in the chat, but there is we basically organised a Jules Loveland fan club. So you're definitely getting some love in the chat there. I took a screen snap, so I'll send it over to you.
I'm sorry I overran. That's so bad.
Oh no, it's really good, and I think a lot of people are going to be watching this back as well to get some tips. So thank you so much, and thank you for being so vulnerable as well, because I think this stuff feels a lot better when someone's bringing it with experience, with lived experience. So
this is what we get to offer to other people in our workspaces. If we talk about it and we're a bit courageous about it, I think it gives permission for other people, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Thank you so much, Jules.
Thank you.
We've got another great session, the last session of the day at 6 o'clock with Mike Klein. He is going to be talking about what we need to know in 2023, which when I read it, I thought, oh, that's next year, and then realised, no, actually, there's another year in between. So I'd love to know what's going to happen in 2023. So please tell me, Mike. So I can and a big shout out to our sponsors, Staffbase, Prezi, React and Share, Redkite and First Up. And also, very exciting, Krispy Kremes are going to be on offer as a prize for the #CommsHero if you snap your social lounge table. So there are 15 dozen donuts on offer. I have not done the maths, so I don't know how many donuts that is in total, but I think it's 15 boxes with 12 donuts in. But yeah, so do post your #CommsHero on Twitter and LinkedIn and all the socials, and we'd love to see that. And please, can we big up Jules? I know we've got a fan club here already, but let's show us some emoji love. And thank you so much, Jules. That was wonderful. Yeah, brilliant stuff.
Thank you, and thanks to Asif and the team for having me. You're all epic. It's been a great week.
It's been brilliant. Bye.
Bye.